After nearly 2 decades as an Xbox cornerstone, that unmistakable sound of a Lancer revving up is finally echoing on a PlayStation console. Gears of War Reloaded is here, and it's marking a historic moment for one of the most influential shooters ever made. So let's break down what makes this comeback so important and whether it really holds up today. Here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll talk about the significance of this release. Then, we'll dive into that classic story and gameplay. After that, we'll look at all the shiny new technical upgrades, get to the heart of the critical verdict, and finally, answer the big one. Is it actually worth your time in 2025? And you really have to start right here, because this is the legacy of Gears of War. You can see its DNA, its fingerprints, all over countless games that came after it. So this release isn't just some simple port, it's a re-examination of a titan that defined a genre, now facing a brand new era and a completely new audience. So first up, the return of an icon. And make no mistake, this is a huge deal. For nearly 20 years, this has been an Xbox-defining franchise. Now, it's finally landing on PlayStation. So, who is this second remaster really for? Well, the critics are pretty much all on the same page. It's mainly for newcomers on PlayStation and PC. This is their chance to jump into the beginning of the saga in its most polished form ever. Now, for the veterans, it's a nostalgia trip, sure, but it's one that comes with a free digital upgrade if you already own the Ultimate Edition. But at its core, how does a game from 2006 actually play today? Let's get into the story and the gameplay. A true classic, but one that's definitely feeling the weight of the years. The story is just pure, unfiltered B-movie action, and honestly, that's its charm. You're Marcus Fenix, a disgraced soldier busted out of prison for one last desperate mission. The goal is simple: deploy this device called the Resonator to map the Locust's underground tunnels. There are no side quests, no branching paths, just a relentless, straightforward push to save humanity. And this is where it gets really interesting, this contrast. The core combat loop, snapping to cover, the strategic timing of that active reload, that whole risk-reward system for a faster, more powerful reload, it is just as brutal and satisfying as it ever was. But, and this is a big but, critics all agree that its age really shows. The movement is often called stiff and clunky, and the AI for both your squad mates and the Locust is, well, disappointingly basic. It can definitely lead to some frustrating moments.
Of course, let's be real. The biggest reason for this remaster is the technical performance. This is where Reloaded truly makes its case, giving a nearly 20-year-old game a proper, modern facelift.
I mean, just look at this table. It shows you the jump we're talking about. We went from 720p on the original Xbox 360 up to 1080p in the Ultimate Edition. Now, Reloaded pushes the campaign to a rock-solid 4K at 60 frames per second and adds full HDR support. But the biggest leap, that's in the multiplayer.
And there it is, 120 frames per second in multiplayer, on consoles. This is an absolute game changer for competitive play. It makes the action smoother and more responsive than it has ever been. For a game where those split-second shotgun duels are everything, this upgrade is a massive deal.
And it's not just the frame rate. There's a whole suite of modern upgrades here. They've overhauled the textures, lighting, and shadows. Those loading screens during the campaign? Gone. Just a seamless, uninterrupted flow. You've got full crossplay and cross-progression. And for you PlayStation 5 players, it even uses the DualSense features, like adaptive triggers and using the controller speaker for radio comms. Pretty cool. Okay, but it's not all perfect. There's one really jarring thing that critics just couldn't ignore. The gameplay is buttery smooth, right? 60 or even 120 FPS. But then you hit a cutscene, and bam, it drops right back down to the original 30. It creates this noticeable stutter that can really pull you out of the experience.
All right, so when you put it all together, what's the actual verdict from the critics? It really boils down to a clear balance of some major strengths and some pretty significant weaknesses. On the plus side, the praise is really consistent. The visual and performance upgrades are a huge win. That core cover shooting gameplay is still just incredibly addictive. It's being called the absolute best entry point for new players, and it's the complete package, with all the previously released DLC bundled right in. But then you have the weaknesses, and they're just as obvious. Let's start with a big one. This is a remaster of a remaster with zero new content. No new missions, no new weapons. That outdated movement and poor AI are still there. And for a lot of people, the huge sticking point is the absence of Horde mode, that beloved co-op survival mode that became a series staple. Not having it here is a major disappointment.
Which brings us to our final section, and the bottom line. Is Gears of War Reloaded actually worth your money in 2025? Well, the answer really depends on who you are.
If you have never played Gears of War, especially if you're on PlayStation or PC, the answer is a resounding yes. This is the definitive version of that first game. It's an essential piece of gaming history, and this is, without a doubt, the best way to experience where it all began.
Now, for the veterans, it's a little more complicated. It's a beautifully polished trip down memory lane, no question. The performance upgrades alone make it a joy to revisit. But with no new content, it's a really tough sell at full price. If you get that free upgrade, it's a fantastic bonus. Otherwise, this is a purchase that's going to be driven purely by nostalgia.
And all of this leaves us with one final, fascinating question. The arrival of Marcus Fenix on a PlayStation console, that's a landmark event. It reflects this major shift happening in the industry, where those walls between platforms are slowly coming down. So is this just a one-off, or is this the new standard? Only time will tell, but this release is a powerful signal of what the future just might hold.